Hello again, and welcome back to Phillies Extra, the baseball podcast from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Scott Lauber. I write about the Phillies and Major League Baseball. And whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or watching on Inquirer.com, YouTube, Facebook, or X, I'm so happy you found the show, and I thank you as always for spending some of your time with me. I'm excited to be joined this week by Phillies manager Rob Thomson. He's in town for the team's annual winter tour, making stops across the Delaware Valley, and was kind enough to fit us into his schedule for what I envision as kind of a state of the Phillies conversation less than 3 weeks before pitchers and catchers hold their first workout in Clearwater. I'll get his thoughts on the fallout from not signing Bo Bichette, specifically as it relates to the return of JT Realmuto. We'll also talk about the narrative that the Phillies are running it back. I'm also curious to ask him about Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter and the attempt to inject youth into an aging roster, something the Phillies really haven't done since Thomson took over as manager in 2022. There's a lot to get to, so we'll bring him in here in a few minutes. But first, because this is our first episode since the Bichette saga, since he spurned the Phillies and signed with the Mets, I want to get into some of what I've learned through my reporting over the last week or so. As I wrote in the Inquirer, Bichette's representatives, Greg Densky and Joe Mizzo from Vayner Sports, asked late last week for 7 years and $200 million and told the Phillies that Bichette would accept an offer if it met those terms. The Phillies agreed to make that exact offer, and when team officials went to sleep on that Thursday night, January 15th, they believed they would get to the finish line, so much so that they informed Realmuto's agent that they were most likely going in a direction that would not involve him. Fast forward to about noon the next day, as the Phillies were preparing their offer to Bichette, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, as one league source told me, they found out from media reports that the two-time All-Star infielder had agreed to a shorter-term, higher salary contract with the Mets, who hours earlier were outbid by the Dodgers for free agent outfielder Kyle Tucker. So the dominoes had kind of fallen and did not break the Phillies' way. The Phillies weren't given the chance to match the Mets' offer of 3 years and $126 million with opt-outs after the first and second seasons. But a source told me, and Dave Dombrowski later confirmed, that the Phillies wouldn't have gone to those levels because they weren't interested in paying Bichette more than $40 million per year with 110% luxury tax on top of that. Now, if this all sounds a little like dirty pool, Dombrowski insisted it was actually inbounds. A deal isn't a deal, Dombrowski said, until the sides sign what's called a memorandum of understanding. The Phillies and Bichette never reached that point. And although it isn't terribly common to get that close to an agreement and have it fall apart, Dombrowski said it isn't the first time that something like this has happened to him over his 40 years, more than 40 years as a team executive. That doesn't mean the Phillies weren't disappointed. Dombrowski called it a, quote, gut punch. And days later, I was told that some team officials were still furious. In Bichette, they saw a player who could improve the lineup with his extreme contact skills from the right side of the plate. And because he'll only be 28 in March, he would have made the roster younger and helped the Phillies thread the needle between their core of 30-somethings, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, etc., and their young players, notably Crawford, Painter, and Aiden Miller. But instead, Bichette slipped through their fingers and signed with their chief rival, no less. Not a great day in the Phillies universe. But within hours of Bichette's decision, the Phillies pivoted back to Realmuto, upping their offer to $45 million over a 3-year term. And the notion that he's some sort of consolation prize is entirely misguided. Yes, Realmuto will be 35 this season. And yes, he's in the midst of a 3-year decline as a hitter. But there's an intangible quality that he brings behind the plate that's very, very real. Look, the Phillies' strength is the pitching, specifically the starting rotation. And to a man, Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, and others swear by the work that Realmuto does before a game to put a game plan together for attacking hitters, and then during a game to help them execute that plan. Luzardo even talked about it in some length last week, right here on Phillies Extra. If you missed it, please go back and check it out. All right, I know that's a lot to unpack, especially when you factor in everything the Mets did this week. Not only did they sign Bichette, but they traded for center fielder Luis Robert Jr. from the White Sox and top of the rotation starter Freddie Peralta from the Brewers. I promise we'll get into all of that in the Reporter's Notebook segment later in the show. And if you stick with me, I'll take a listener question at the end. Right now, though, let's get to my conversation with Phillies manager Rob Thomson. Rob Thomson, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be here, Scott.
I was going to say that you brought a cold front down from Canada, but I looked a little while ago, and I think it's snowing in like 20 degrees where you live. So does this feel like a heat wave to you?
Well, no, actually, it's funny because Philly seems to be, because we're right on the ocean.
Yeah.
There's a lot more humidity in the air, and it just seems like it's colder than, if it's 30 degrees here and 30 degrees where I'm at, it seems colder here just because of the humidity. It just really gets into your bones and you can't get rid of it. But I was looking at my security cameras at my house in Canada, and it's blowing up pretty good right now.
You get that lake effect snow.
Yeah,
right?
We're right in the middle of three Great Lakes, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario. So it doesn't really matter if it's snowing, we're going to get it because the wind just blows it, right to us.
Well, I think we're supposed to get a big one this weekend, so hopefully maybe we'll outsnow you for a change.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 3 weeks out from spring training from pitchers and catchers. You usually get there by February 1st or so.
Yep.
I wonder, I know there really isn't such a thing as an off season for you. I think at one point you mentioned that you've been talking to Dave Dombrowski like every day and several times a day sometimes, because even when it seems like things are quiet, it's been a busy winter. There's been a lot going on. I wonder if this is kind of that time of year where you start to get that itch again, like, all right, the holidays are over. You're probably sick of your snowblower. Your Maple Leafs are kind of trudging along, right? Like, is this the time of year where you're like, let's get there. Let me grab that fungo bat and get back to work?
Yeah, it is. It usually happens like right after Christmas, right after the New Year, and the heart starts pumping a little bit. And, once I get in my truck to head down to Florida, it really starts to sink in. And as you go further south, it gets warmer and warmer, and you really feel like baseball's back. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think we've got an exciting club. I think we've made some improvements in certain areas, and I'm looking forward to it.
You're in town this week. You're making the rounds as part of the Phillies winter tour. And, there's obviously been a lot of conversation about Bo Bichette, his decision to kind of change course and sign with the Mets. There's really no use, I guess, crying over spilled milk. But I do wonder if some of it might need to get cleaned up, because there were a bunch of players who might have been affected if one thing or another had happened. Like JT Realmuto said the other day that he knew there was a chance that he might be somewhere else if that opportunity had come to pass for the Phillies. A spot on the infield probably would have had to have been cleared. So what's your read, if you've been able to get one yet, on just kind of everyone's mindset in the aftermath of this and where guys kind of stand in terms of, all right, knowing, okay, I'm here now and this is what it's going to be?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think for the most part, professional athletes and our guys, because we've got pretty experienced club, they understand the business side of it. They understand that things happen and things don't happen, and they have to just keep moving forward and just stay focused on what they need to do and what they can control. And because they've been through it quite a bit, trade, free agency, trade rumors. So, it's all part of the business. I think they understand that. And now that we're past that, I think they're ready to go.
You were asked the other day about sort of the narrative that the Phillies are, quote unquote, running it back. And I liked your answer. You said, we added 3 new relievers. We got a new right fielder. Justin Crawford's going to get a chance to play every day. And probably have a rookie starting pitcher. You've got Otto Kemp for a full year. You're turning over, I think you said 20 to 25% of the roster. And you said, if you think that's running it back, I can't help you. And I agree with that. And I think the question then is not so much, are you running it back? I think the question that people should be asking is, are you better today than you were at the end of last season? And I wonder how you feel about that. You did bring back Schwarber. You did bring back JT. You've added Adolis Garcia. You've got a different bullpen. There's some youth coming. Are you better today than you were at the end of last season, or is that kind of to be determined?
I think it's to be determined, but I feel better about it. We lose Ranger, and that's a big loss, but that's part of the business too. And but I do feel really good about our bullpen. We lose Matty Strom, who was a big part of our bullpen, but the addition of Keller, who can get both sides out, the addition of Jonathan Bolin, who I think is a really good 2-inning guy that can get righties out. We got some stuff for him to get lefties out. This left-handed last name Backus, Kyle Backus, he looks really good. He's really interesting. He's got a really low arm slot. So I'm really excited to see these guys, and I think we've got a really good fit here. I'm excited to see Adolis Garcia. I think there's a chance he bounces back. I think with Adolis, and I can't speak for him, but in being with Texas last year, with the expectations they had, with all the injuries they had to Seager and Semien, and I'm wondering if he didn't try to put the team on his back and it put a little bit too much pressure on himself. So maybe he can come in here and just kind of slide into the group and get back to where he was. I'm excited about Crawford. We heard all about him last year. Everybody kept asking me if, when's he coming? Well, it just didn't happen, but now it looks like it's going to happen. So I'm excited about that. The speed, the small ball, the on-base ability. It's really exciting to me to have him hit at the bottom of the lineup and turn the lineup over. I think is huge for us. And with Andrew Painter in second year coming off Tommy John, I think this is the year where he probably gets really close to being back to normal. And if he's close to being back to normal, he's really something. So there's a lot of really good things going on. I think, because of the Bichette thing, a lot of that stuff gets overlooked a little bit, and I understand that. But I certainly don't want the people of Philadelphia to think that we've gone in a different direction and we're not committed to excellence, committed to winning, and committed to winning world championships, because that will never change. We are fully committed to all of that. And, we got to get to the playoffs, but we've got a really good club and we got to play better in the playoffs.
You mentioned Justin Crawford. You mentioned Andrew Painter. We'll talk a lot about Aiden Miller, I'm sure, in spring training as well. And, I read something a few months ago. I think Fangraphs had a really interesting note that the Phillies have had the third fewest major league debuts of any team since the start of the 2022 season. The Yankees and the Braves have had fewer. And I think that's probably a function of the state of the roster, right? With all these long-term contracts and veteran guys, there just hasn't been a lot of opportunity to bring up young players and have them fill spots. But that's going to change this year with those three guys, with two of those guys in particular, and maybe with Miller at some point. And I've been thinking a lot about your last couple of years with the Yankees in 16 and 17, and how those teams kind of got younger on the fly, right? Yeah. Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, and I think Greg Bird was in that group, and Severino and Jordan Montgomery and Gleyber Torres, I think, eventually got there. The baby bombers, right? Yeah. I don't think it's apples to apples, because you guys did miss the playoffs in 16. Yeah. But for the most part, you threaded the needle and transitioned kind of from one group to another while still contending. I wonder if you see that as maybe a little bit of what might be going on here in the next few years, with that next wave coming in and assimilating with the group you have, and maybe that's how the dynamic changes a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities there. I think if you want to have a really healthy organization, you have to be able to infuse some youth along the way. The Dodgers do it in a completely different way, and God bless them. They're not doing anything underhanded or illegal, but that's just the way they do it. But I think if you want to be really healthy and for a sustainable future, I think you have to have a good farm system. We do now. We have some really high-end prospects with Miller, and we've got Rincones Jr. coming, and we got some other kids coming. And I think the future is bright for a long time with this organization, with the veteran guys that we have, and we have some long contracts, granted. But I think that there's some spots there where we can fill with some of this high-end young talent.
it's hard to do, right? I mean, like it's hard to commit to young players at big positions like center field and still contend and still compete and make the playoffs every year. What was it about like that transition with the Yankees that kind of enabled that to sort of happen? That you went from mid 80s wins in 16 to back in the playoffs in 17 without really skipping much of a beat.
Yeah, it really happened towards the end of 16, I believe, where we brought Judge up, we brought Sanchez up, Brian McCann took more of a DH role, and we let those guys play, and they played really well. And there were some warts there, no doubt, and some growing pains. But when we turned it over into 17, they took off and ran with it, and it was really good. So, the thing about that group was there wasn't like we have a veteran group that's really good. I mean, and there were some good veteran players there, but our core guys are really good. So, if Turner or Crawford can come in and just kind of do his thing, don't put too much pressure on him, just do his thing. He's going to be fine. Same thing with Painter. If Painter's in our 5 spot to start the season and he just relaxes and just does his thing and grows with it, he's going to be fine. And I would think that at some point, you're going to have injuries. I would think we're going to see Aiden Miller and Rinconis Jr. at some point, maybe not for the entire year, but to fill spots. And they're more than capable of doing that. So, yeah, I like I said, I'm really excited about it. I really am. I love young guys. I always think of myself as a development guy more so than a big league manager or coach, because I just that's where I've spent most of my time, and I just love the enthusiasm, the energy that they bring to the team that kind of filters throughout the clubhouse and into those veteran players, and sometimes they need that.
Let me ask you about JT. You were a catcher,
yeah.
So I know that you must have a special appreciation for his work behind the plate and what he means to the pitching staff. But it's one of those, like I asked Dave Dombrowski about this yesterday, it's one of those last elements of the game, I think, that we don't measure with analytics. We don't put a metric on game calling or how do you help a pitcher through a tough spot. Yeah. So in the absence of that, being able to quantify all that, I wonder if there's an example you can give that maybe illustrates why JT is such an asset in that area and maybe what you might have missed if, in fact, things had gone differently with Bichette and maybe JT wound up having to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I was looking through it the other day, just OPS numbers with JT catching with our pitchers, ERA numbers with JT catching with our pitchers. And it's really amazing how good it is. And obviously our pitchers are good, but when you can stand out on the mound and you can relax and you understand and that guy behind the plate has spent 2 hours prior to the game preparing for that guy standing on the mound, it gives you a lot of confidence. And you can measure the caught stealing rate 30%, so that's still really, really good. I don't know what the receiving numbers are, but it seems like he's really good. I don't look at those numbers very much. The way he runs the game, and he can slow down the heartbeat of the team and the heartbeat of the game just by his presence, just by when he goes to the mound, when he calls timeout. You can't measure all of that. And I've said it before, I've had Posada, I've had Brian McCann, I've had Pudge Rodriguez, I've had Russell Martin. He's as good, if not better than all of them. And he's kind of in the same mold with Russell Martin as far as the body, what kind of shape he's in, his durability. So I know JT's 35, but he's playing like he's in his late 20s. That's the type of body he's got and the energy that he brings. So he brings so much, and I'm so happy that we have him back. I really am.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's that athleticism aspect that Russell Martin had that we definitely see from JT, and body-wise, they are very much alike. I think that's really a good comp there. Dave said the other day that the plan is still to move Nick Castellanos off the roster one way or the other. And it's obviously an atypical situation. I wonder, looking back, if you could reflect on, all that happened with Nick last season, from the situation in the dugout in Miami in June to reducing his playing time in the summer, and then September and the comments that he made. You pride yourself on communicating with players, and the culture here has been so good, especially since you took over as manager in 22. Was it difficult to kind of navigate that situation last year and kind of make sure that it didn't cause a larger disruption to what was going on?
Yeah, you always try to keep the noise down, because there's always little things that happen, and I feel terrible that I feel terrible that any player would feel like I didn't communicate well enough, because I pride myself on that. I want players to not be confused. I want them to understand exactly what's going on. And if there's something going on with them, that my door is always open, and I expect them to come in, and they need to communicate with me too, because I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. So it was just a difficult situation. Hey, look, the thing with Nick, the bottom line is he wants to play every day. He wants to play every inning, every day. And you can't fault him for that. I think I respect him a great deal just for being that guy.
More than ever, I think managers are like the public face of an organization. You talk to the media twice a day, every day for 8.5 or 9 months, starting in 3 weeks when we see you in Clearwater. And in a market like this in Philadelphia, everything gets dissected and analyzed that comes out of everyone's mouth. I wonder, what the learning curve was like for you when you took over in 22 and over the last few years, just in terms of balancing what you say publicly to project kind of calm in the midst of maybe sometimes when things aren't so calm, and also doing the things behind closed doors that need to be done or need to be said to kind of keep the ship going in the right path, because it's a balancing act, right? I mean, on one hand, you're trying to communicate to the fans what's going on. On the other hand, you can't communicate everything exactly, right? So how long did it take you to kind of develop that?
Well, I think I'm still developing it. It is difficult, and because I think everybody, I shouldn't, I want to be completely transparent, but I can't all the time. And I want to do it in a very classy way where, people think highly of this organization. They feel like, okay, it's being run in the right way. And, but it's difficult. And it was a quick learn, when I first took over. And I'm very fortunate to have Kevin Gregg and Chris Ware and their staff helping me along the way, because they have a really good feel of what's going to be asked and the things that are going on with the ball club. And we talk through it before I talk to the writers and to the media. I just, I want to make sure that our fan base knows what's going on. I can't tell them everything, but I do want to let them know that everything's okay and we're going to be fine. And even when we've lost 5 in a row, I want to make sure that they understand that I truly believe that we're going to be fine. Because I think that part of my job is being the conduit to our fan base, giving them the news of the day with our ball club. And I think that there's a mutual I really feel a mutual respect between the writers and myself, that we get it out properly. And I appreciate that, because it's really important. It's one of the responsibilities of a manager, I feel.
No question. 2 more quick ones before I let you go. When Don Mattingly came aboard a few weeks ago, I asked you about having someone with his credentials as a former major league player and a star player on the staff, because as well regarded as your staff is, there's no one with that sort of resume as a player at the big league level. How important was it, I think? Because I wonder whether the conversation between, let's say, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, and Don Mattingly is probably
It's
just
different.
inherently a little different, right?
Yep.
So how important was it to have that guy there who has that ability to relate to those guys on that level?
It was huge, and so Dave and I have been talking about it for a couple of years about getting a guy like Donnie, but it just didn't seem like the right guy had come around. And then when we found out that Donnie was available, and with my relationship with Donnie and Kevin Long's relationship with Donnie, JT's relationship with Donnie, it just seemed like this perfect fit. Because you're right, it's we don't have that ex-player that was a star on our coaching staff, as good a coaching staff as we have, because I think we have the best coaching staff in baseball. But I think we're even better with Donnie, because he can be, that guy that they go to when times are bad and when they're slumping a little bit, because Donnie's been through it. He's been through it all, and I think that there's a lot of benefit to that.
You've gotten a chance, I think, to see Zach Wheeler this week. I know you said he's throwing from 90 feet off flat ground. Is there an idea yet of when he might get on a mound? And do you just have an idea for his state of mind coming off of, this pretty big surgery 5 months or so ago, like where he just sort of stands in terms of his confidence level that he could come back and be Zach Wheeler?
Yeah, he feels really good, and I'm really encouraged by it. I don't have a date when he's going to get off the mound, but he's getting stronger. The ball flight keeps getting better every time he throws a baseball. The release point is getting more consistent every time he throws. He's got certain goals, like he wants to start the season with us. Whether that's going to happen or not, that's up to the trainers and the medical people and the doctors. But he wants to be an all-star. He's got goals, so that's good. He's got a carrot out there that he's after, so that's good. And this whole rehab process could take up to 8 months. Generally, I think he's probably going to be a little bit ahead of that. Whether he's on our opening day roster, I'm not really sure. Don't want to push him for sure, because we want a healthy Zach Wheeler and we want him back to normal. And I believe he's going to get there.
All right, maybe we wrap up with this. You're going to head home for about a week or two or week and a half before you go to Florida. You're a hockey guy. We're less than a month away from the Olympics. How are you feeling about Team Canada and their chances to
feel good? Yeah, they got a good club. They've had one of the Tampa Bay Lightning players just got hurt. He was going to be on the team. He's not going to be on the team. Canada's good. The U.S. is really good. My Maple Leafs are starting to play better. The Flyers just won I watched the Flyers probably more than I watched the Maple Leafs now.
Okay.
Just because I'm interested in them. Rick Tocchet came into my office during our season, right before they started their training camp, so I got to know him a little bit. And I've always been a big fan of his, just the way he had played, because he was a scorer, but he was tough too. And
right.
Win the corners, he could fight, he could do a lot of different things, and so I always respect him a great deal and watched him. So I'm excited for the Olympics. I'm excited for the Flyers. They've the Zegras trade has really helped them out a lot. I know that the Mishkov deal is going on, and he's a young kid, and he doesn't speak the language, and I think that the talk is sort of grooming him the right way, and he's going to be a superstar. I truly believe that, but I think Talk's doing the right thing with him.
What do you do if the Flyers and Leafs are like battling it out for that last card?
I don't know. I don't know. That'd be a tough one. I think if they're playing in Philly, I'm a Philly fan.
Okay. Well, you win either way, right? I mean, so even if you lose, you win in that scenario if it's one or the other. Rob, this was really great. Glad we were able to sit down before you've got to start doing this multiple times a day and probably get tired of saying the same things over and over and over again. So safe travels to you back home. Hopefully you're able to enjoy the last week or two before spring training. And thank you again for spending some time with us on Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
It was great being on. Thanks, Scott.
I want to thank Rob Thomson again for joining me this week. It's time to open my reporter's notebook and share some of what I've been thinking about vis-a-vis the Phillies and the Mets and their respective off seasons. What if I told you that Team A won 96 games last season, 95 the year before, and has the third most wins in baseball over the last 3 years? And what if I said that Team B went 38-55 after June 12th last year, the fifth worst record in baseball over that span, and went from leading its division by 5.5 games to finishing 13 games out of first place and missing the playoffs entirely? Now, which of those teams, A or B, would you say most needs to take a wrecking ball to its roster? Team B, right? Well, as you might have guessed, Team B is the Mets. And David Stearns, their president of baseball operations, put on his construction helmet when the offseason began. He traded left fielder Brandon Nimmo and second baseman Jeff McNeil, two of the Mets' longest tenured players. He didn't match the Dodgers' bid for all-star closer Edwin Diaz. And he let Pete Alonso, only the franchise's all-time home run leader, sign with the Orioles in free agency. You might think that fans would realize, painful as it might be to see popular players walk out the door, that massive changes were needed after one of the most spectacular collapses in the history of a franchise that is familiar with collapses. Instead, Mets fans, well, they lost their minds, screaming from the tallest buildings in New York that Stearns had surely lost his. This week, Stearns' plan took shape. After falling short on Tucker, the Mets pivoted to Bichette, who will play third base. They traded for Luis Robert Jr., a bounce-back candidate in center field after 2 atrocious years with the White Sox. Then they dealt 2 top 100 prospects, according to Baseball America, pitcher Brandon Sproat and infielder Jet Williams, to the Brewers for all-star starter Freddie Peralta, who can be a free agent after the season, and swingman pitcher Tobias Myers. Bichette, Robert, Peralta, Myers, and reliever Luis Garcia will join new second baseman Marcus Semien, new first baseman Jorge Polanco, and new relievers Devin Williams and Luke Weaver on a roster that has been completely and totally overhauled. And yet, if you ask the Mets fans in your life, I suspect many of them are still pining away for Alonso, Nimmo, Diaz, and McNeil. That's how loud the outcry was in New York when those players were shipped out. Okay, what about Team A? Of course, Team A is the Phillies. When the offseason began, Dave Dombrowski acknowledged a need to improve the roster after losing in the divisional round of the playoffs for a second consecutive year. But this was going to be a renovation, not a demolition, and you could understand why. The Phillies prioritized bringing back their own free agents, notably Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto, and in the end, that's what they did. So the guts of a 2-time defending NL East champion roster is back. Good news, right? Not after the Phillies' public flirtation with Bichette ended without a deal. And fans, at least the most vocal ones, fear that a staleness might be setting in with a core that has been together now for 4 going on 5 years. And that's an understandable viewpoint too. The Phillies are, of course, 2-8 in their last 10 postseason games, dating to Game 6 of the 2023 NLCS. It's unacceptable for a team that's built to win now. It's difficult to handicap whether the Phillies or Mets are better now than they were at the end of last season. There are too many variables on both sides. Will Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter fulfill their top prospect billing? How will the Mets gel after so many changes? But it sure is topsy-turvy in the NL East, isn't it? The team that needed to blow it up took a stick of dynamite to its roster, and it couldn't have been less popular. The team that has benefited from continuity, at least in the regular season, brought back the band and is getting crushed for it. Up is down, east is west, and neither fan base seems particularly satisfied. Okay, it's time to play Hit and Run, where we take a question from you out there. Want to join the conversation? It's easy. Drop me an email at the address listed here, or reach out on the social media platform of your choice, X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or you can always drop a line in the comments section on YouTube as well. This week's question comes from T. Martin at T. Mandolfan on X, who asks, given the uncertainty with Wheeler, Nola, and Painter, I really thought the Phillies could have made a bigger push for Tatsuya Imai. Any chance they bring Walker Buehler back or Nick Martinez, or another right-handed swing type of guy? Thanks, T. Martin, for the question. You make a really valid point about the question marks in the rotation. Zach Wheeler, in particular, almost certainly will be behind the other starters in camp as he returns from thoracic outlet decompression surgery. The Phillies don't think he'll miss all that many starts, but if I had to guess, I'd say he won't be in the rotation until 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks into the season. That would leave the Phillies with Sanchez, Luzardo, Nola, Taijuan Walker, and Painter. Beyond that, you've got Alan Ronhell and Gene Cabrera on the 40-man roster and stashed in AAA, with Bryce Wilson and Tucker Davidson, who signed a minor league contracts and will take some big league experience to Lehigh Valley. So yeah, I do think the Phillies are looking to add pitching depth before spring training. To answer your question about Tatsuya Imai, the Japanese pitcher who signed in the offseason with the Astros, I never got the sense the Phillies were very interested in Imai, even though the price tag was, I think, lower than most people expected. Buehler would make some sense, but he's looking for a guaranteed spot in the rotation. The same goes for someone like Zach Littell. I don't think the Phillies can offer that right now to anybody. Nick Martinez is an interesting name. You mentioned him. He was much more effective as a reliever than as a starter for the Reds last season. And after making $21 million last year and $14 million the year before, I suspect he's looking for a salary that doesn't really align with what the Phillies want to spend on depth, especially given that they'll have to pay 110% tax for being over the highest threshold. Maybe some pitchers get more desperate as spring training gets closer, and maybe the prices come down. We'll see. But I do agree with you. I think adding a swingman or a number 5 or 6 starter type is probably their biggest need in the last 2 weeks before camp opens. Well, we got a lot more great questions as well, and I'll try to get to some of them in the upcoming episodes before spring training. But let's leave it here this week and tell you that you can listen to this episode and most others on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please go there, give us a follow, and while you're there, please rate and review us. That's also a great way to catch up on Phillies Extra episodes that you may have missed. You can also go to Inquirer.com and click on the Inquirer Live tab for a collection of various episodes. Thanks again, of course, to my guest, Rob Thomson, and thanks as always to our producer, Mariam Akraz, for her hard work and flexibility in helping us make this happen every single week. Most of all, thanks so much to you out there for listening, watching, and of course for reading the Philadelphia Inquirer. We'll see you next week.